What's up, chat? Welcome back to the stream. It is Tuesday. We are getting a little bit tactical today. We got a couple things to talk about. Not too much going on in the community right now, but I figure we would cover some team event stuff, as well as some new releases, because just today, they released a couple hours ago, the new Aeldari units from the new pirate expansion thing, where all the pirates are doing a big battle, and we get to talk about Aeldari, so that's pretty exciting. Well, it's exciting that we do get to talk about them. I don't know if it's that exciting that they are there, but I guess, like, Aeldari finally got, like, a beat stick character, which is kind of cool. I don't know. Could be good. Could be good. So, let's hop into it real quick here. Chat. Birds, Catan, Custodies are a problem? You're not wrong. Not entirely incorrect. Why does this look how it does? Okay, I guess we'll do this. I don't know why it goes from being small to big. Can we do like a... No? All right, well, that's just how it is. All right, fair enough, I guess. Let's, actually, we can just grab the picture. That's better. Okay, much better. We like that. So yeah, new Warhammer community article just dropped with the new Prince Uriel, as well as a lot of the new Unrathi unit data sheets from the new expansion. Still no points values on any of these, which is because this is basically an expansion set of entirely utility units. Points values are like crucible. We don't have them, which is a little bit awkward. However, I think this data sheet, we're starting pretty strong here, to be perfectly honest, because I think Uriel looks kind of sick. I'm going to level with you, chat. So importantly, he has a 7-inch scout. This is like the forward operator expansion too. The normal Unrathi stuff, I guess if we just pop over here, we can pick up the Corsair data sheets, the standard ones, because that's where he's going. He either goes in Void Reavers or Void Scarred. The Reavers are the OC2 guys that gets rerolls on objective markers, which is actually kind of sweet. The Void Scarred, I don't remember off the top of my head, having literally never seen this unit in play. Having never seen them, I think that... I don't remember what they do. But they do also have a 7-inch scout. And then we're talking about fast units, too. Their base move 7, and you could potentially +3 move them if you play Warhost with Battle Focus. So you're moving this unit 17 inches up the table. And unlike the terrible Chaos Space Marine data sheets that they previewed yesterday, Prince Uriel has scout on his data sheet. So he can join either of those units, and he can actually scout with them. He doesn't take their scout away. Nicely as well. He does have an actual leadership ability, which is interesting. So he gives his whole unit sustained hits 1 and +1 to hit. I think, first of all, that's nice that it's +1 to hit, because it works if you have Void Reavers, because they have reroll 1s to hit. So if, for example, we have attached him in with the Void Reavers, he's going to give sustained 1, and then you're going to reroll 1s. So you're hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, 6s are double, which is actually kind of cool. That is sort of a lot. It's also all attacks, which means it works on your special weapons. And this unit gets like a D cannon, right? You can take a Neurodisruptor or Shuriken Rifle, and then you can have a Wraith Cannon if you have 10 models. At the very least, though, you have at least 1 blaster. So getting a sustained hit shots on a D6 damage anti-tank weapon, kind of nice. So there's something there. Maybe units of 10 guys is good. The Void Scarred, I don't think are quite as interesting. The problem is that they're like lower OC. They're supposed to be combat units, but they don't get the hit rerolls. So they're just that you choose 1 unit, you get lethal hits against it. I think you get extra guys in there. Then you get some like power swords and stuff. But I think the Void Reavers is where I'm sort of excited about these. Somebody could correct me on the Void Scar datasheet. Like you get some slightly better melee profiles, but their baseline is like a bunch of strength 3, so I don't know if we're that interested in it. However, getting this with hit rerolls on a relatively cheap utility unit. I lost my Reaper datasheet apparently. Feels like the way to go. I don't know, Chance. That seems okay. If Uriel's not crazy expensive, right? If he comes in at 80 points or so, you get 140 point, just like a big beat stick, just a unit that can hit you really hard. Seems like it could be good. I don't know. We'll see. At a relatively fast speed too. If you get them into a dedicated transport, you give scouts to the transport as well. Pretty cool. But yeah. The other thing is that his baseline profile is really good. I think also he gives you redeployments on up to 3 Aeldari units, not restricted by any sub-faction keywords, so just normal Eldar. So he works on any of your Harlequins or your Unrathi or your regular Eldar units. And so you're gonna bring this guy for his melee profile, I think. And then on top of that, he also gives you a redeploy. Okay. Sure. That seems pretty good. I'm going to level with you. I like it. He'll be 100. He could be, yeah, he might be 100. The Void Reavers themselves are so inexpensive. They are, if I remember correctly, 65 for 5, and you get a special weapon. That he could be a little bit more expensive. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But he himself comes in, importantly, he has 2 ranged attacks. If you are battle focusing these guys and moving quickly, it is likely you'll be able to get both in. The downside is one of them's only range 6, so you have to you almost certainly have to shoot what you're about to charge, which is awkward. It's actually kind of anti-synergistic, but it is what it is. Because they're both pistols, he gets to shoot both of them at the same time, which is kind of cool. And because they're assault, he can do that when he advances as well. One of them is strength 6, AP 2 for 2. The other one's just a shuriken pistol. But importantly, because he's got the leadership buff here, those are probably hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s with sustained hits. So very consistent. He can chip in some damage with that. And then his spear is the important thing on the datasheet, I think, in addition to the redeploy, is strength 7, AP 3, 3 damage lance, which means it wounds essentially the entire game on 4s. 4s or better with sustained hits. High AP, high damage. I like it. I like it a lot. That's a good profile to have. It's extremely consistent. He averages, if he's leading a unit of Void Reavers, he averages 6 hits out of 5 attacks, which is pretty good. And there's certainly a chance, in some cases, you might fish if you really need the additional hits to push up his output. I kind of doubt it because missing sucks, but it is what it is. But getting additional sustains on this thing is really sweet. So yeah, I don't know. Prince Uriel seems like I don't know if I'm going to say he's like crazy good or anything, but assuming he's not overcosted, he seems extremely solid. He hits super hard in melee. He gives you a redeploy, and he synergizes very well with the Void Reaver squad. Seems sweet. It's Eldar, so there's 75 points. Well, it's Eldar, so he'll print at 60, and then everyone will freak out. And 6 months later, he'll be 125. That's how Eldar works, chat. That's how we know. If we have 2-3 whole editions of data points for how that goes. So I don't know. Very up on Uriel. He seems great. I think if I was an Eldar player, I'd be kind of excited about that. Gives you an extra little melee option if you want one, in addition to like Jane's are. Now that the Starglaive Autarchs are kind of trash, having an additional profile like that is really good. We'll move on to his best friend forever, Karseth, who seems also really cool. He also attaches to Void Reaver's Void Scarred. He can't dual attach, which would be kind of sweet, but he's much more of a support unit anyway. He just has Omni Scramblers, which is cool. It is for himself only, so the rest of his unit isn't affected. He's another thing where if he's cheap, he could be really good because you can Omni Scramble your home deployment, your back end deployment zone very nicely. Or you can he does have Scout as well. Dude. Chaos Mastery players must be balding right now. all these characters like very playable with their core units, and then they released the fucking like Reaver Captain and the stupid the like dudes who lose infiltrate, the Red Corsairs who lose infiltrate as soon as they attach anything. Cool, man. But you could get a 7-inch scouting Omni Scrambler up in the middle of the table early, which is pretty sweet. He doesn't even really need to attach to a unit. You kind of want him in a unit, I think, but it's not like hyper necessary because all of his abilities just work while he's just hanging out. He doesn't have any attachment abilities anyway. So he brings an Omni Scrambler. He scouts by himself, and then he brings an anti-infantry blast weapon. It's basically Yvrane's gun. Although I think Yvrane's is devastating, right? Or it used to be. I think they nerfed it like massively. No, hers is still devastating. It is essentially a side grade of Yvrane's gun. Hers is D6 plus 3 instead of D6 plus 2. It's devastating wounds, but it's half the range. Anti-infantry too. And his ignores cover instead. So, I don't know. I guess the anti-infantry 2 ignore cover that you shoot from 24 inches instead of 12 does feel a little bit better. Plus it's base strength 3 instead of strength 2. So, definitely feels good. Hey, thank you for the membership, Apache. Appreciate you, bud. But the other thing is that when he hits you with that, he can rive you. You become riven. So you select an enemy unit hit by an attack made by Dread of the Deep, which is his spell. Dread of the Deep Void, I should say. Until the end of the turn, that unit is riven. Each time an Eldar model from your army makes an attack that targets the riven unit, add +1 to the strength characteristic. So he is a little baby Eldrad. He is not as good as Eldrad. And then gives you +1 strength, but it affects all Eldar models on an already pretty good gun. So, honestly, seems great. I don't know. I have not much else to say here. He seems pretty sweet. He also hits on 2s with his melee attack and his anti-infantry 2. Do the regular Farseers hit on 2s, or they hit on 3s? I feel like they hit on 3s. No, they hit on 2s as well. All right, so he just has 3 Farseer attacks. But he can't throw his stick, which is unfortunate, I guess. That's too bad. But, yeah, I don't know. +1 strength, I guess it depends on the strength characteristic a lot of times. It's certainly good for things like striking scorpions to be the one that like really I think sort of makes that unit kind of sweet, because striking scorpions in a lot of cases are just swinging strength 4 melee attacks if we go look at their profile. And so because he affects you for the entire turn, he puts all of their attacks into strength 5 instead of like strength 4. So things like Ork Boys, T4, or other infantry, they start winning better. He can push like fire dragons up to strength 10, which is very reasonable as well. So you start winning medium vehicles on 4s. You can push Dark Reapers up to strength 11, which is also good. So a lot of these like MSU Aspect Warrior lists could get super buffed by him. Now, I don't know how often you're going to be playing those these days because Aspectos did get nerfed pretty heavily, but he is also an Aeldari Psyker. So he works for Seer Council stuff as well. So if you're going to play Seer Council, he's also effective there. So I don't know. It just seems cool. He's like he's a mini Eldrad. He has a cool support effect. If you just want him to sit in the back of your deployment zone the entire game and screen out your home objective, that's also good. And then on top of that, he's got a really good army buff. I don't know. Seems good. Definitely, I mean, like all these things, like very cost impacted. Because if he ends up being, like 95 points or something, it might be tough to fit in. But if he's relatively inexpensive as a character slot, he might be very nice to have for that +1 strength for profile matchups where it matters. And especially he's a very strong metagame consideration as well, because you can go into a metagame expecting particular toughness profiles. Like right now, T11, being able to crack T11 is really important. So if you can get strength 5 up to strength 6 and wound on 5s, then he's very impactful there. And you could also, if you go crazy, you could also combo him with Eldrad, and then you're +1 strength and +1 to wound, which means you can actually get up to effective +2 to wound in a lot of cases. If you can get, for example, strength 9 up to strength 10, shoot a T10 target and give yourself +1 to wound. Now you would on 3s instead of 5s. That's a lot of investment. That's probably going to be somewhere in 200 points, but I don't know. Could be pretty sweet. Strength 13 Bright Lances. Yeah, that's also good. Get wrecked. Great unclean ones, I guess. He gets Uriel up to strength 8. So he starts winning like, I don't know, T8 on 2s or 3s, I guess. Pretty cool. Now, from there, it's a little bit downhill, I think, for these new data sheets. The next one is the Sky Reavers, which is kind of cool. These guys are additional Scout 7. This is like pure utility. For every 5, 2 of them get like cool guns. So you can have fusion gun. You can have 2 fusion guns in the unit, which I don't know. That's pretty good. They can move up to 15 inches because you can give them, or 14, I guess, in most cases, because you can give them the battle focus for additional movement. They also scout 7 and move 12 base, so their capacity to hit midboard objectives top of 1 is crazy, right? As like a disruption piece, they're really good because this unit is incredibly fast. They can move 21 inches on top 1, and they could just sort of like all their weapons are assault too, so they can just sit in front of you. Their ability, however, is kind of not very great, and they also have deep strike, importantly. But their ability is if they were eligible to fight in the fight phase, they can normal move up to D3 plus 3 inches, or fall back up to D3 plus 3 inches, which is fine. But this is not a unit that I think we're very excited about getting into melee. Their melee weapons are like strength 4 on a good day. They do all have a strength 4 AP2 melee profile, but like you're probably replacing a couple of those with guns, I imagine. At least a fusion gun and probably a blaster, I would imagine, so that we get a little bit of anti-tank from the unit. And then we can have a blast pistol, so we can have like 3 multi-damage shots. That's something, I guess. The downside is it's relatively low strength. Are there fusion guns? Only strength 8? Oh, it's because it's not the dragon fusion gun, that's why. I remember. The dragon fusion gun's +1 strength, +1 melta. But I don't know. Like, that's pretty okay. Or you could just swing. It's only 15 melee attacks, strength 4, AP2. Honestly, it's not that exciting. You can compare that to any, like, Space Marine utility, and it's not that good. And those guys don't even kill. Like, those guys don't even one-shot most other utility units. So, I think we're taking guns on these dudes. So, yeah, I don't know. The ability feels kind of superfluous. But, again, if it's a unit that's not hyper expensive, being able to move, like, effectively an infinite distance on the top of the first turn is actually huge, right? These guys go so fast. 7-inch scout plus up to 14 inches plus potentially an advance means that they're movement blocking, they're disrupting your expansion objective. If you're just holding it with 5 OC, they can just take it immediately or contest it immediately, which is big. Just the speed is kind of crazy. For a long time, we saw the 5-man swooping hawks. What's a swooping hawk run you these days? Those guys obviously also did mortal wounds, which is a big deal, and had aspect shrine tokens, but they're 95. And I can't imagine that these are going to be, around that points value. So if we're talking about a unit that's like 80 points or something that can move 1 trillion inches on turn 1, I feel like there's some play there. They have better, well, I guess their guns are side graded from a swooping hawk unit. The hawks have a higher base movement characteristic, but they only really shoot. These guys can also melee and bring anti-tank weapons. High strength, multi-damage weapons, whereas the swooping hawks are largely anti-infantry, although they can stack up damage with lethal hits. So, like, the better weapon profiles, I think, is offsets the loss of grenade pack, and then you get scout, which offsets the base movement characteristic, and then you're just sort of comparing the 2 units directly. So it might be a similar points value, but I can't imagine that they're that much like more expensive. I guess they don't have an invuln save, so they're much easier to kill. But I don't know if you're that worried about it. Swooping hawks are not known for their survivability. I think this unit actually could be pretty sweet. It's weird that it exists kind of in the same like zone as a lot of other Eldar units. Like there's so many fast-moving 5-man Eldar squads in that codex. That's like basically the entirety of the codex, and we're just adding more on top of that. But to be honest, this is definitely contender, assuming the points are correct, which is definitely the refrain of this entire reveal, is that and because everything's just a unit who's going to go perform actions, how efficiently we do that is so important. And that's basically also the case for the Starfang, which is their new vehicle. This is a weird one. This is a super bizarre profile. It's essentially like a support vehicle. It has the Starweaver defensive profile, so T6, 6 wounds. It's a 3+ save, or like Venom's 3+ saves. Venoms are 4+ saves, so it's actually tankier than the version in the in Drukhari. And Void Weavers also 4+ save. So it is actually tougher to kill than any of the other equivalent vehicles, which is cool. I guess it's a Viper. Well, it's because it's a Viper equivalent, so it's just has slightly heavily armored but loses transport capacity. I guess from that perspective, it makes sense. But here's the thing. This also has 7-inch scout. I think that's the best thing on this data sheet, to be perfectly honest. It's move 14. You can star engine it, so you can... Oh, it doesn't... You don't have to. The star engine doesn't do anything here. Just kidding. Damned Legion! Thank you for the membership. Appreciate you, bud. Well, yeah, so this can have stealth because you have smoke, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't have stealth baseline. But again, it's another super fast moving unit that scouts 7. And so this is basically a utility squad. You can just put OC2 somewhere and advance and shoot its guns. Now, its guns aren't that exciting. It's D3 plus 3, strength 6, AP 3, 2 damage. Which means I hope that they don't upcharge it for its weapons. I think that would be the biggest downside is if they're like, well, it shoots 2 damage guns, so it has to be whatever, 90 points or something. And you're like, well, okay. But like the guns are okay. You're going to shoot on average like 6 shots into a 5-man Space Marine squad and kill 3 of them or something. Which is like definitely relevant damage. I'm not going to say that it's not doing anything, especially because it can advance and do that. But I think largely the big benefit of this thing is that it's an individual model that can scout and then move and doesn't die immediately. I also kind of like this ability. It's pretty cool. You choose an Eldar infantry unit visible to your army and 36 inches away from the Starfang, and it shoots smoke grenades into it and gives it stealth, which is neat. I don't really understand how the hallucinogen grenades target your infantry and then give them stealth. It feels like it should target enemies, but I appreciate that it's a defensive effect. And there's going to be a lot of cases where this matters, where you like chain... Importantly, you don't have to see enemies to do this. You have to see your own unit. So let's say it's like turn 2 or bottom 1 or something, and we've strung a unit to the center. You know, let's say it's an Aspect Warrior squad, striking Scorpions or something to get Ares and Isla or whatever. I think that's a bad example because I think striking Scorpions have stealth anyway. So it would be like Howling Banshees or something, or Swooping Hawks is the best example, I think. Yeah, the striking Scorpions have stealth already. But let's say that, we've done that, and suddenly we can fall back on -1 to hit and an invuln save to not lose the whole unit in one activation, and then you get a second turn out of them. And I think that's going to be where this comes into play. There's also some times where you can't, well, they like wildly nerfed Skyborn Sanctuary, so there's going to be more cases where your army is committed and being able to protect backline things like, Dark Reavers or whatever, Dark Reapers, in order to get more activations out of them is going to be helpful. And then on top of that, you just also have the super fast unit that can hop around and do actions and stuff. I don't know. I don't hate it, but again, it has to be very cheap because none of these units by themselves are going to be like, these are not game-winning units by themselves. They're incredibly useful utility units. That 7-inch scout's kind of a huge deal, but I don't think any of them are like massively unique within the Eldar roster, which means that they have a lot of competition. So they have to be costed competitively to be viable. Well, so we'll see. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm cautiously optimistic about these data sheets. I think Uriel's the most exciting one to me. The other ones are kind of just okay, in my opinion. They are similar and potentially superior to other similar units that we have already in the faction, but I don't know if they're doing anything particularly unique. Uriel just stabs people with a big stick, which is cool, and redeploys you, which is also cool. So I don't know. I think this is a pretty interesting, reveal. Why does it have the same save as a gladiator? Yeah, there is no defensive difference between this and a gladiator, Chad. I agree. It's absolutely unconscionable that this is exactly the same level of resilience as a gladiator. Pay no attention to the toughness or wins characteristic. So anyway, there's some new stuff. That's pretty cool. How are we feeling about it, chat? 6 dice tank shock is trash. So true. But imagine like a universe where these things are cheap, right? We're getting a new Viper data sheet. Who knows what that's going to look like and whether or not that gets the new Viper gets more guns and might be cheaper, right? Or what is it currently? 65? Fuck me. Okay. The Viper is 65 points. This has to be 65, right? The Viper is 65 points and gets a Bright Lance. You telling me a disintegrator cannon is not gonna be less expensive? Also, it also does -1 to hit. Crazy. Viper might go to 70 or something just because it's getting more output. But this thing's probably in the 60s. And you can just stack like a trillion little vehicles everywhere, and we're back to like old OG Eldar vehicle spam where they all get, rerolls and stuff. But in this case, you're probably using more army-wide buffs to buff multiple activations. I think it would be cool. Yeah, we talked about Chaos Space Marine stuff yesterday when it came out. So you can watch the stream from yesterday. It's where we talked about that. And yeah, I don't know. The Chaos Space Marine stuff is significantly less interesting than this is, in my opinion. Unfortunately, it was a real doo-doo of a Corsair data sheet, in my opinion. Unless they're really cheap, and then it's cool. But if they come in at like 20, 22 points a model or something, it's going to be unplayable trash. With enough cheap scouting units, Eldar can build deployment zone GL lists and block for 3 turns. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of what happens, I think. Especially with like, you can stage Uriel up in the middle because he scouts, right? And then the jump pack guys can all pin you turn 1, right? We could move 3 of them 21 inches plus an advance. So we can move 3 of these guys 21 plus D6 inches. That's so far. That just literally crosses the midboard. And then you are stuck in your deployment zone. You can't, and they move block you, and you're like, this sucks. And then the next turn, they can stage all their fire dragons and stuff in the center, and then they can just hit you with those next turn. You could play it in Seer Council, and then you could redeploy those things directly up behind the Sky Reapers too, with Unseen Truth or Unshredded Truth. I think there's a lot of play. There's definitely going to be a lot of interesting things happening. I think it's pretty cool. I'm really glad, though, that the Starfang does not have like a big fucking gun on it. Oh, it has grenades. I guess that does make sense. It is a grenade launcher carrier. But, So you can run 21 and then throw a grenade at somebody? Do the Sky Reavers have grenades? They do. Okay. That's actually kind of fun. Vehicles with grenades always throws people off. Every time I grenade somebody with a Land Raider Redeemer, they're like, excuse me, what? You're like, yeah, dude, it has the keyword. I don't know. What the fuck? But I'm glad that they aren't like dedicated anti-tank platforms, because I do think like the Tau Piranha design space is a little silly in some cases. So these guys not doing like just ruinous damage definitely feels better to me. Piranhas have 2 las cannons and a D6 plus 4 damage melta. So you're not like one-shotting tanks with these guys, which is, I think, a little bit more reasonable than that unit is. They're also smaller, like physically smaller too, which is going to be good. Anyway, chat. Also with spiders, yeah, for sure. That's all the new reveals, I believe. I don't think we have anything else to talk about, so let's talk about some teams. So I have something to say about Team 40K, and which is that I think because Team 40K, much more so than singles 40K, tends to be representative of the upper echelon of the metagame. By that saying that, and what I mean by that is essentially because you're limited in your faction selection, most of the time you're going to take the most optimal variety of any particular faction that you're going to try that you're going to be bringing, right? I think that there are rare cases. There are cases where you bring particular like weird team centric lists where you're going to be building around a deployment style, or you're going to be building around a what's the word?
At Bucket of Steel Sybil donated $6 through Super Chat. So you're telling me that a freaking Land Raider has grenades,
I am telling you
but
that.
Only Teraxi I have them for AdMech.
I am telling you that. Look at this, chat. Ready to have your mind blown? Boom. Look at that right there, dude. You know why they have it? You want to know why? It's because, let's grab a picture. The little shields on the front. If you play Dawn of War 2, you'll know this. I looked up Redeemer because I'm so 40k pilled, and I just got Christ the Redeemer from Rio de Janeiro. Here we go. These little fucking guys, that's so big. These little guys in the front are actually assault grenade packs. I think when this thing was released, they used to give the assault grenade effect to units that disembarked from them, which is importantly synergistic because Terminators couldn't throw grenades because their armor's too big. And so we brought them out of a Redeemer, and then the Redeemer would shoot a grenade to suppress the things you were about to charge, and then they wouldn't get fight first if you charged them straight. It was a whole thing. That was how 5th edition worked. It was a fucking wild time. But if you played Dawn of War 2, it's actually an activated ability, and they just shrapnel the cone in front of them. It's actually sick. I wonder if we could. I'm sure there's a picture of that. Can we get that on video? I did something wrong. I would love to get a picture of it. Will they show the grenade activation? It's like the coolest. It's like the coolest effect. Was it Baneblade? Well, you're getting brutalized, dude. I don't know if they're gonna do it. Oh, there it is. They did it. Here it goes. It's so cool. You shoot that into a bunch of infantry and just ruins them. It was sick. So anyway, that's why Land Raider Redeemers have grenades. Crusaders do too. There's a little bit of 40k. That's deep 40k lore right there, chat. That's a deep cut. It's the Land Raider grenade. Pretty cool. I don't know. So you could charge into stuff without cover, without gaining initiative 1. Yeah, you'd always fight after anyone who was occupying a piece of terrain. So if they were wholly inside the terrain feature and you charged them, they would always swing first. Unless they were themselves initiative 1. So you had to have grenades to offset that. So you could bring grenades on like assault marines and stuff, but Terminators couldn't do that. So in order to support Terminators, the Land Raider Redeemer got a grenade ability, which was cool. I think that was pretty sweet. Yeah. Because they're modeled with it. Tell that to Striking Scorpions. Do Striking Scorpions not have grenades, but they're modeled with it? Dude. Striking Scorpions do not have grenades. Oh, brutal. Let's look at the model. We're looking it up, chat. That is generally the rule. If you can find a grenade somewhere on their datasheet, they have grenades. Which, honestly, I mean, sort of makes sense. Right? However, fucking unbalanced as hell. It's so bad, dude. Let's find the Striking Scorpion thing. Striking Scorpions. Here we are. Oh my god, calm down. Where they is? Show me a grenade. Show me a grenade. Why is it so fast? Holy crap. Can I see the sprue? Do they have the pictures of the sprue? That's always the tell. I don't know, chance. I'm not seeing any grenades. I think the rule might hold true. Also, I can't find the sprue. So if it's an optional piece, we'll never know. I think the rule might have won once again. They have belt grenades? Where? Where are they at? The weird thing about Striking Scorpions is that they have a bunch of shit. Eldar has a bunch of stuff that looks like grenades, but actually aren't grenades. Which I think throws people off all the time. Because we've actually done this search for a lot of things. And a lot of times they have like a funny looking weapon magazine. And that looks like a grenade. And people are like, why can't I throw it? And you're like, well, it's their weapon mag. All right. Here it is. I have found a picture of the Striking Scorpion sprue. Can we find a grenade? Oh, is it this thing? Is that supposed to be the grenade? Because these are their magazines. Maybe it's that. Or that's an anal plug. You know? It's just like when they get bored. They're out in the field. They're field crafting. They're out there for a really long time. And they really need some excitement in their life. That might be what that's for. You know what I'm saying? Love can blossom on the battlefield, chat. Just saying. That's probably what the lore is, I imagine. That's what summoned Slaanesh. What's this belt accoutrement? Yeah, I think that would be the implication. Unless there's like they have a power cell for their weapons, right? Is it the weapon power cell? Kind of looks like it, but maybe not. They have a little power cell thing like here and here. It does look a little different though. You might be right, chat. They might have grenades in their sprue and everyone forgot. It kind of looks like a fusion gun power cell, right? Or like this thing. But I don't know. What a fun diversion this has been. What is a haywire grid supposed to look like? Great question. Who knows? Land Raider Crusader should lose grenade keyword and get improved assault ramp where it showers the enemy in mortal wounds if they're just marking unit targets it with charge. That'd be cool. Land Raider Crusader does need some help. Although I will say, unironically, Land Raider Crusader is probably one of the most underrated units in 40k. The problem is that a lot of times the meta forces you into anti-tank roles. But if you play into like T3 or T4 infantry spam and you bring a Land Raider Crusader, you feel like a fucking god. It's so much cheaper than a Redeemer. It's like a good trading piece. And then if you apply any buffs to its guns at all, it shoots 24 times. So like with twin linked. So if you're like, I'll oath you Storm of Fire and just push this Crusader. Mark Hurtley used to play a Land Raider Crusader, I think, for a while. He's the Land Raider guru, and he played a Crusader for a while. And you would just push turn one. You'd play Gladius Task Force, Ultramarines, and then you would Storm of Fire it, and it would just obliterate stuff. It would go, +1 to wound, so it's winning most stuff on 4s or 3s, full rerolls, hit and wound, AP1, ignore cover. It was like, you're just hand your opponent like 22 saves. And they're like, wait, what is this? This is all from just the bolters? You're like, yeah, fam. Get wrecked. This thing's like 200 points. It's actually kind of crazy. I think people underestimate the Land Raider Crusader. Plus, it has a 16 model transport capacity. In many cases, it's very relevant. Especially if you're trying to transport 2 OC stuff or 2 transport capacity stuff. Plus, it gets all the extra guns too, so you get the Hunter Killer and the multi-meltdown stuff. I played one. I'm strongly considering trying to scrounge some Land Raiders and play them at Adepticon. And play just like way too many Land Raiders. And Crusaders are kind of integral to that because they're your utility units if you play 7 Land Raiders, which I have a whole video on, by the way. And I think that list is probably better now than it was when I played it. Is it good? No. But is it cool? Yes, very much so. Like doing the same thing in Saga of the Beast. Something triggers lethals, driving in the middle of the table would be a problem. Yeah. It's not good at Overwatch. And the awkward part is that I kind of wish they gave like some semblance of the old Bolter discipline back where rapid fire goes out to longer range because it operates at the same range that the Redeemer does. And so a lot of cases you're like, if I just transpose the 2 vehicles, the Redeemer does do more damage. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of times the Redeemer like wildly overkills what it's shooting at, whereas the Crusader like more efficiently kills it if you can stack buffs on it. So I don't know. Like if you're shooting 5 idiots or like 10, regular dudes or something, you'd almost prefer to have a Crusader rather than the Redeemer. Whereas if you're shooting at like 2 wound enemies, you want the Redeemer. But the Crusader does do things at 24 where the Redeemer kind of only operates at 12. So you win some, you lose some. All right, chat, let's talk about some teams. So, the thing with the teams, chat. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. Steel Sybil, as the TTS wants to say. The thing with teams is that in a lot of cases, I think teams are like a canary in the coal mine. Could be a cold mine, but mostly a coal mine. For what is kind of a stagnant metagame. And I think we are seeing that sort of made manifest right now. Because whereas many times, or in some cases, some few cases, you will find specifically team constructed builds where you are trying to build an army, to play in a team format to skew for people, to answer specific matchups, or to play for a particular layout, which is cool when that happens. That is certainly the exception rather than the rule. So if we, for example, we look at one of the biggest team events of the weekend, the West Coast Warbands, WCW. I get it. It's like World Championships of Warhammer, but not. This was played in Portland, Oregon, and it was won by the Florida Alliance. If we look at the Florida Alliance, basically exactly 2 lists are not just perfect meta from their factions. One of them being Mike Mizeni, absolute Chad, who played Hexwarp Thrallband. What a cool guy. We'll talk about that list for sure. But everyone else played basically the normal list for their faction. So like when you look at a faction, and this is true for basically every one of these builds, I could look at a faction and tell you almost exactly what they're playing. We did play Delve Shift Assault in Leagues of Votann, which is neat. But all of the other ones. So you have little legs. Is this a little? It's a little chibi. This I did not expect. In fairness, that one got me. I didn't expect that in the list. It's like 5 Big Knight Custodes companions. We literally saw this go like X and 1 yesterday. We talked about a list. Plus, Saras's Night Lancers are just really good. I don't know. Jet Carps are playing Aeldari is pretty cool. But we're playing Blade of Ultramar. Okay, pretty interesting. Sounds sweet. Drukari, we're playing Spectacle of Spite. Fair enough. Spectacle of Spite, pretty good. Town Empire, we played regular old Monka, Grizzled Company inside Astra Militarum, etc., etc. And while I don't think it's like, I think that teams are just emblematic of what is becoming a relatively stagnant format. Now, I think, and especially if we see changes to Necrons, which are currently sort of like, making everyone skew around them. If we see changes to Necrons, which they absolutely deserve, then we will probably see a more diverse metagame. But within most factions, I would say the list diversity is almost zero. Even within Space Marines, like 80% of the time you're on Ultramarines, and sometimes you play Salamanders, and occasionally you play like a non-compliant chapter. But most of the time you're just going to play Ultramarines, and you're going to play Blade of Ultramar or Gladius Task Force. Most of the time you're going to play like Montcaw, Intel Empire, Grizzle Company, and Ashram Motaram. That said, there are a couple of outliers, and what I want to talk about today are the outliers because I think that's more interesting. So that was not the only team event of the weekend. There were several team events that went down. However, most of these lists are just normal ass lists. And unfortunately for our discussion here, that's not like useful information, I think, because most of the time this is technology that we have examined 100 times over the course of the last 6 weeks or so. So it's like, just imagine in your head the best army for every particular faction, and that's what most of these armies end up being. So there you go. But the interesting ones are what we want to discuss. The downside is that right now we don't have a ton of really interesting and high performance stuff to talk about. We also were sort of like going through singles events, and this happened. It's a little bit easier to find outliers in singles play, especially because people like to put their stamp on their own armies, rather than just simply play meta. But teams, I think the pressure ends up being that you end up playing meta more often than not. So let's talk about this big thing. So West Coast Warbands rocking 176 players, 22 teams of 8 over in Portland, Oregon. Congratulations. Won by, as we said, the Florida Alliance. There it is. And I want to talk about this cool Hexwarp Thrallband list because it rules. We've talked about a couple. It does seem like there's a small component of the metagame of the Thousand Suns community who just absolutely stands Hexwarp Thrallband, which is really cool. And we actually saw a couple of them do pretty well last week. But I'm excited to get back into it because it's much more interesting than talking about an endless number of Grand Covens. We talked about a lot of Grand Covens. We talked about 2 Grand Covens yesterday too. That went pretty well. Thousand Suns definitely doing okay, but only with like basically one list. And sometimes Risen Rubric if you play like cool stuff. Anyway, Hexwarp Thrallband. So this is the zone control detachment for Thousand Suns. You get reroll 1s to wound with psychic attacks if you are just anywhere. But if you are in your flow of magic, which is your zone control mechanic, then instead you get +1 to wound. So you lose reroll 1s, you get +1 to wound. +1 to wound makes a lot of these psychic powers significantly better. The Winged Demon Princes shoot a 9 attack, strength 4 psychic power. +1 to wound on all of those attacks is great, and it brings their melee profile from being kind of below average and bad to being pretty okay. In addition, one of these Winged Demon Princes is rocking a Noctilith Mantle, so it cannot use rituals. However, it always gets +1 to wound instead of the rerolls, which is nice. We have another one with Arcane Might, which is +1 strength to psychic weapons and +2 if you are in flow of magic. And with these guys having wings, they can either wrest control of your opponent's home objective to gain flow of magic because they can 6-inch deep strike, or they can't charge when they do that, to be fair, but there are some situations where you can 6-inch deep strike and then double move them to get onto the objective and then shoot everyone to death there. Then you unlock flow of magic for the subsequent turn. Or you can just deep strike into wholly within positions where you would get the flow of magic bonus in order to get that +2 strength. So that puts up his melee attack to strength 10, which is good. And it puts up his Dark Blessing up to strength 6, which is also good. Both of those are good. We have a sorcerer with Empiric Onslaught. which gives you +3 attacks as long as you are in flow of magic, as long as your whole unit is in flow of magic, importantly. That will improve his psychic power to 12 attacks if he uses his once per game, with sustained hits 3. So he's averaging like 15 hits or something, I think, is the 18 hits or something like that. And it depends on if you have hit rerolls, I think, on your target. But that's a lot at strength 9 with wound rerolls or +1 to wound. Either of those is good. We have another sorcerer and then a Terminator sorcerer plus a Zangor shaman. Double rubric marines, both with flambers. We have 1 chaos rhino. Important. The chaos rhino is a little bit awkward because it sort of it has a little anti-synergy with the detachment, because if you do disembark the rhino to get flow of magic, then you don't get the +1 to wound from the army ability is not as good. The other weird thing with rubric marines is that they already reroll their ones, so you're trying to get flow of magic with them anyway. It's kind of a weirdly designed detachment. There's a reason that it didn't see much play for a really long time, is because a lot of its abilities overlap with abilities that already exist in the faction. But if you are using explicitly the Winged Demon Prince profile in large numbers, which is probably the best way to play it, and in some cases the best way to play Thousand Suns in general, then it seems pretty good. We have double Chaos Predator Annihilators. I don't think the Thousand Suns Annihilator benefits from psychic weapons, which I guess is nice if you have all of these Demon Princes running around, so you can ping something to give them the rerolls. But it itself does not gain psychic weapons, so it doesn't get any of the effect of the detachment ability. That's in Warpforged Cabal, where you can get the psychic keyword. Reroll hit roll and reroll damage. And then you get a what's the thing? What's the thingy? You get a wound reroll off the top gun as well, just naturally. I lost my place. There we go. I don't know if there's any like huge synergies between Annihilators and the detachment. No, they're just good at shooting, I guess, which is helpful. Can give ignore cover to your psychers. Okay. We have Scarab Occult Terminators, Sekitar robots, triple Fatecaster, Grapo, Zangor Enlightened, double Zangors as well. The nice thing about the Scarab Occult Terminators, so you have a 6-inch deep strike wholly within flow of magic, so you can get more easy access to rapid fire shots off of the Scarab Occults. We also have Fallbank, Shoot, and Charge for a Psyker unit, as long as you're inside flow of magic. It has to be inside flow of magic when you're targeted by the stratagem, which is actually very difficult to do. It means that you have to maintain control of the mid-board, or whichever zone you're in, at the start of your movement phase, which is very difficult. Because most of the time your opponent's going to try to contest you, but sometimes you're able to do it. Who knows? Just play explicitly hidden supplies every game, and then maybe you're okay. Honestly, that might be one of the considerations. If one of the terrain layouts, because I imagine that this used National Tabletop League rules. Can we find out? Pictures. I love pictures. Oh, this looks like WTC. So we probably didn't use NTL rules. Oh, this is AI weirdo. Yikes. Event pack. Player packet. Oh, good. It downloads. That's what I love. And it's 70 megabytes. Oh, God. Can we see format rules? So the reason that that's relevant is that National Tabletop League has a mechanic by which the terrain layout determines the mission you play, whereas WTC format doesn't do that. It does look like they are playing one mission over the course of every table. So there's no way to ensure that you're playing a particular yeah, a particular mission. So not NTL rules. It's kind of weird because it was played in North America, but fair enough, I guess. The other cool list from this particular event here, chat, is for Leagues of Votann, which I think is neat. Let's grab the lists. Bryce Bennett, who we've had most of these players on stream several times on the channel, a bunch of times, but Bryce Bennett played Delve Shift Assault or Delve Assault Shift, which is cool. We don't get to see that one too often. A lot of times it's a Hearthband these days, but this might literally be one of the team format sort of considerations here, because you're able to throw a lot of Chthonian Berserks at your opponent. So if they don't screen very well, they just have like big heavy stuff that you can anti concussion maul into. And you can keep them locked in with deep striking Chthonian Berserks over and over and over again, then you're probably off to the races. You're having a great time. However, if they have a bunch of little idiots running around that can contest your objectives and knock down your yield points and are inconsistent for Chthonian Berserks to kill, maybe less exciting. That said, Bryce was playing a mix of concussion mauls and plasma axes, so he was relatively well-rounded. So the Chthonian Berserk profile can either take the anti-monster, anti-vehicle maul profile, which is very good. However, its base strength characteristic is relatively low. Here we go. It's only strength 5, but they're all AP2 3 damage. But we have one plasma axe weapon, which is going to be slightly better into T3 infantry. T3 or T6, I guess, infantry models. It's the same against T4. But T5 plus, the plasma axes are going to do significantly more damage than the concussion mauls. The mauls don't even wound T3 infantry on 2s, which is sad. The downside of this whole list is that everything's 4+ weapon skill. So if you don't have any accuracy bonuses, so for example, you're not holding an objective in Fortified Takeover, and you're not you're not attacking onto an objective in Hostile Acquisition, then you are just dependent on rolling good 4-ups, and you just hope for the best. And that's where you're at. But as it stands, like, you have a bunch of 4+ feel no pain idiots running across the table, shirtless dudes who can be difficult to kill. We do have a Delvework Navigator Brocure Ironmaster, so that he can hop out and then regenerates Chthonian Berserks back to their units in order to maintain control of objectives or give you extra threat range or to keep the units alive. And, of course, in this detachment, we have Weavework Buttress, which gives you -1 to be wounded on any Votann infantry inside Hostile Acquisition. So you want to be keeping your unit in Hostile Acquisition for a lot of the game, because you can -1 to wound from shooting attacks, and then it's a little easier to get +1 to hit on OC1 infantry in Hostile Acquisition than it is in Fortified Takeover. A lot of times you fight into OC2 stuff and you don't have a lot of shooting, and suddenly the OC1 Chthonian Berserks, especially if they're attritioned a little bit, don't take objectives away from the thing they're charging until after they hit them, which means you don't get the +1 to hit. So you're still subject to 4+ weapon skill, which gets really awkward. We have double Capricus Carrier, 2 Hecaton Land Fortresses, double Jaegers, so we can try to maintain control of those objectives. Big Ironkin Steeljack Disintegrator unit to attach with the Ironmaster, I imagine. Downside is, I guess I can't go into a Hecaton, but I guess here we are just... if you attach the character, I don't believe, because the Hecaton, I think, is only 12. Or did they move to 14? Oh, they moved to 14 transport capacity. Just kidding, chat. Just kidding. That's a nice quality of life from the Codex update, so we can put them in a land fortress. That's actually sweet. And the cool thing, as well, I actually love this unit, is that Weavework Buttress works on any infantry. It doesn't only work on Chthonian Berserks. So even outside of Fortified Takeover, you can source -1 to be wounded on a T6 2+ save unit. That's an already tough unit to kill. They get rerolls from the Ironmaster as well. Plus, it gives you some good shooting, so you aren't entirely dependent on the what's the word? Charging Chthonian Berserks. You can play a little cagier because you have this big brick plus 2 Hekaton land fortresses that you can actually hit people with. Reroll once a wound is good because the unit has critical wound effects. So getting rerolls there is sweet. And you can regenerate a guy, or you can repair a guy. We can't regenerate him, but we can repair him, I guess. Too bad we can't bring a dude back. That would be cool. But you just heal a guy back to full if you don't take that much damage. In a lot of cases, you won't because they are very difficult to kill. The other thing, too, is that the unit is so tanky that you can play it a little bit more aggressively. So you can get Delvork Navigator off online more often because it's very unlikely you get one shot. The Iron Master himself is very difficult to remove because he has so many ecogs with him. He adds basically 4 ablative wounds to the unit. If you expect to get hit by anti-heavy infantry stuff, so like plasma, overcharged plasma cannon kind of things, like AP4, 3 damage, 4 of those go on idiot like Ironkin before you lose any Steeljacks. 4 of them go onto 1 wound guys. And then if the attack allocation can work correctly, if they put 1 damage shots into you, you can lose one wound guy and then just take them on 2+ saves on the Steeljacks to try to keep them going for as long as possible. So this is basically like, it actually feels like fighting 10 Steeljacks when it comes to shooting back at these dudes in a lot of cases. So we've seen a bunch of these lists that just focus entirely on Chthonian Berserks and land fortresses. I really like this build in particular with this unit because I think they synergize incredibly well. The Iron Master can't go into Steeljacks? What? Is it true? Oh my god, you're so true, chat. You're so right. He just goes into Thunderkin. Oh, all that stuff I talked about is not true. Well, get fucked, I guess. I mean, Delvork Navigator, he's still probably the best place for it because he has low op next to vehicles. But I thought he gave wound rails to the guys. Well, that sucks. This unit's bad. Just squat this faction, then we don't have to worry about him. Well, that's stupid. I'm sorry, chat. I thought that the fact that he could repair a unit would indicate that he could attach to them. That would almost make sense. Weird that the Iron Master cannot go with the Iron Kin. Sure, man. All right, well, fair enough, I guess. Yeah, that's incredibly stupid. Like we talked about, all these other lists are basically also worthless. They're just like mostly normal stuff. Jack Harpster was playing Aspect Host, which is cool. Votann models are cool, but I hate the book. Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a mess of a codex, I think. Just like super inconsistent. It has some cool stuff in it, but like I don't know. It just is it feels like the Tyranid Codex, like to some extent, where it's just a bunch of stuff that is like anti-synergistic and doesn't work well together. So fair enough, I guess. Votann Codex is the worst 10th edition codex. Is that true? That might be the case. What would be a worse one? Like, what's in contention? Orcs, maybe? Orcs on release, I think, might have been worse. Yeah, because like all of the good things that ever came out of Orcs was always from Index or online releases. Like the Orc Codex itself never did anything and actually had to get buffed. Oh, World Eaters. World Eaters might be the worst one. I think it might be World Eaters, chat. World Eaters had to get like so heavily buffed at the start when they first released because like nobody played them. They like massively like ripped the heart out of their army ability and Angron to the point where the faction was like DOA. And then they had to just like get massive points. They had to get reworks and massive points reductions. I feel like it might be World Eaters, chat. But it's certainly Leagues of Votann are in context. Green Tide was cool. Yeah, Green Tide was good. I guess like Green Tide was actually I don't know. It was like meta weird and go get him or here we go was go get him was broken because you could do it in engagement, which was like really fucky. I don't know if like Bully Boyz, I guess they did nerf it early, but I don't know if Bully Boyz is actually as good as people gave it credit for on release. There was a lot of like weird, I don't know. It was just heavy infantry. You just shoot them with heavy infantry guns and they died. Like, it was that exciting. Release AdMech? Oh, maybe release AdMech too. AdMech is another one where like basically the only detachments that were acceptable are from online releases. Like Halo Screed Battleclade came from not the Codex. And sometimes you play Skitarii Hunter cohort, but the other ones are basically unplayable. Yeah, it might be AdMech too. There's been a lot of real dog shit in 10th edition chat. This edition's been a mess. I can't wait for a new edition. Wipe the slate clean. Get rid of all these bad factions and give us some codexes that are actually worthwhile. That would be nice. All right. Let's talk about this aspect host list. Pretty cool. We're on an Azurban Janezar Lycus with a Wave Serpent. 10 Dire Avengers. Jesus. So aspect host still can or Asserman, I should say, still can fire and fade. They changed Skyborn Sanctuary so that you cannot re-embark into a transport unless you fought in melee, which basically no one's ever going to do. Oh. Can I have my thing update, please? Thank you. So you have to use it in the fight phase, and you have to have fought on that turn to be able to re-embark. So you don't get to go back into transports most of the time with it, unless you're like Janezar. So Janezar could sometimes do it, but you have to be in a very specific position on the battlefield. Azurman, however, his ability just works like fire and fade, so he can still get into transports at the end. So that's where we get our repeatable in and out of transports. Running triple fire prisms, Howling Banshees, double Ranger squads, Swooping Hawks ×3, Warwalkers, Warp Spiders ×3. What a blast from the past. I'm curious about the Fire Prisms, because I know Fire Prisms also are affected by the Infernal Puppeteer thing, where if you don't have line of sight in range to something, then you can't shoot with it. I know NTL ruled around Infernal Puppeteer and said that effects that like change your eligibility for targeting make it so that you can do them retroactively and you can still be selected to shoot. I don't know if WTC has ever ruled on that because they don't run events for another 6 months or so. I doubt it. So who knows? But it's not as bad for fire prisms because at least you could just gain line of sight to something like 1,000,000 inches away and still use the linked fire anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. The real issue is with Infernal Puppeteer where like you only had an 18-inch range. And so being out of range of something, making you ineligible to shoot was really bad. But at least fire prisms can just like target almost anything on the table if they expose themselves a little bit and then fire through linked fire anyway. Use the ruling where the puppet had to be within lone op range. I don't know what that means. Puppet had to be within lone op range, not the puppet. I'm not sure, chat. The lone op thing I think is that one's a little bit less like controversial, but so eligibility to shoot thing is the real question mark because that's never been, for some reason, eroded by the main FAQ, which speaks to me that it's meant to work as ruled because they've just never changed it. But despite going through several update cycles, but who knows? Who knows, chat? I imagine that it's been brought up to them. the other event I wanted to discuss today with you all is from Australia. We had kind of a fun little team event over here, the South Pacific Gaming Teams.
At Bucket of Steel Sybil donated $6 Canadian and 99 cents through Super Chat. Did you forget that on release AdMech Protector made you stay in your DZ the whole game while Conqueror only worked against the enemy DZ?
Was that index release or codex release? I cannot remember what happened to index release. I remember codex release, the only, like, literally the only detachment anyone expected to play was Skitarii Hunter Cohort. But I can't remember exactly what the faction mechanics were. Because I think that was like alongside Death Guard, where the index release was such a fucking disaster that they were like, they had to rework all the abilities. And I want to say that happened pre-codex, but I can't remember the timeline now. So I don't remember off the top of my head. The Adeptus Mechanicus Codex is very bad, though. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Adeptus Mechanicus Codex is good at all. It's honestly still not that good. It was almost good for a hot minute, and then they nerfed it a lot, like several times over and over. Probably too many times, yeah, some would say. All they had to do was upcharge Sicarians by 2 points, and they were probably okay. But they did a whole rework thing. All right. We can look at the Horsemen, which is kind of cool. They had some interesting stuff going on here. This is where we start to get some more interesting compositions, chat. Whereas most of the team events we've looked at so far have been basically like cookie cutter top end stuff. There's been a little bit of spice coming from Australia. So the composition for the winning team here from Horsemen was World Eaters, Space Marines, which I imagine is Ultras. It is. Oh, it's like Tigurius, I guess. Also, Terminator Marnius Calgar. Incredible. See, and something cool. Terminator Assault. All right. Okay. I guess actually probably interesting. It's Assault Terminators with Calgar for advance and charge. And then you get -1 to wound from Blade of Ultramar. So you can just have 40 wounds with -1 to wound. And you could stack it with AOC sometimes too. Plus double Vindicator, Wardens for utility stuff, Stern Guard Veterans for Tigurius, I guess, for the wound reroll gun, plus Repulsor Executioner. That's interesting. We found the interesting Ultramarine list, chat. It just has to take 10 Assault Terminators, which is kind of sweet. But I want to talk about some of these other lists. We do have Berzerker Warband with some Berserkers, I guess. Oh, it's like a Berserker spam, 60 Khorne Berserkers with Karn, Invocatus, Juggernaut Lord to deliver them. No Angron. 8-bound plus Exalted 8-bound, Goremongers, Jackals. Pretty cool. That definitely feels team pilled. Because sometimes if you play this in singles, there is a 50-50 chance you immediately lose as soon as you set up. Because your opponent just like hard counters you. You just play against mass 2 damage and your whole army dies immediately. But with teams, because you can play around with your matchups, you can dodge like the mass 2 damage sweeps or whatever that this army would normally just get pwned by. So that's pretty cool. We also saw, as I have in the thumbnail here, Outlander Claw Genestealer cults. This I live streamed this detachment last week. It did beat Necrons, but it was a pretty close game. I think Necrons made some play mistakes. They probably should have won, but if they were played optimally, but Genestealers were able to take it down. But that said, this army is incredibly good at stealing objectives from people. So for those who we haven't talked about this detachment in a really long time, it gives your mounted and vehicle units +1 OC. And gives all your Jackals OBSEC. So it's just this like mass glut of OC spam between Goliath trucks, Rock Grinders, Jackals. They're all pushing like 4 OC. Jackals go to OC 2 apiece. They're very fast and can respawn. So the amount of objective secure you can apply is crazy. We have 1 Alphas with Serpentine Tactics. Lets you shoot when you fall back. It's pretty nice. And then the Alphas gives you shoot and scoot, right? You choose, if you hit something with a sniper rifle, you get reroll 1s. And then after you shoot, you can charge. Michael Allen, how's it going?
At Michael Allen 7,269 donated $4.99 through Super Chat. How bad would GK's win rate be without Warpbane Task Force? Hopefully they get a rewrite in 11th.
I don't know if Grey Knights would exist as a faction without Warpbane Task Force. Warpbane Task Force is the entirety of the Grey Knights faction identity right now. Besides those funny people playing Banishers and that one guy who plays Sanctic Spearhead, who's a Chad, and I love him. It's all Warpbane Task Force all the time. Yeah, I think, honestly, it feels like they just took this edition off with Grey Knights, and they were like, here's a fucking upgrade sprue and a 30k release that everyone's going to proxy as a Nemesis Dread Knight. Like, stop pestering us, and we'll do it next edition. I have to imagine that next edition is like, here's a range refresh and a huge set of new mechanics, because, like, yeah, I don't disagree that the Grey Knights design has been fucking wild. The funny thing is that they're still, like, pretty good. They have the capacity to play into a lot of, like, really bad matchups. They're just really inconsistent is the problem, because a lot of their success relies on rolling 2-ups to hit or rolling 2-ups to save, and then, like, rolling 6-inch charges or 9-inch charges. And if you're good at those, you're great. But if you're bad at those, then all your stuff, your expensive, like, 25-point infantry all die, and then you don't have any units left. So it is what it is. Yeah, so many of the Grey Knights games I've watched have just been like, comes down to like a couple activations where accidentally a Grey Knight unit dies, and then you're like, well, GG, I guess we lose. You're like, okay, fair enough. Anyway, chance. We're talking about thank you for the super chat. We're talking about Jackal Alphases right now. So being able to shoot and then scoot with the Serpentine Tactics upgrade seems pretty good, because then you can normal move in the shooting phase. So you can fall back 12. And I think a lot of cases you can fall back 12 in front of people, right? And then shoot and then move afterwards to then yoink the objectives on the opposite side of them if they don't kill your Jackals, which actually seems kind of nutty, to be perfectly honest. We've got triple Reductus Saboteurs. There's a bit of a sub-theme in these builds of mortal wound effects. So the Saboteurs are good for...
Adjusted Panda 81 donated $5 through Super Chat. Yo, if I would like you to look at a list, would that be later, or could you do it now?
Yeah, I can do it after we talk about this team result. If you have me on Discord, you can just DM a list to me, and I will look at it. So the Saboteurs get a grenade for free, so they can deal, somewhere around 3 mortal wounds once per turn with the grenade. Then they get their remotely detonated explosive, so it's another D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. If you move up close to them, which most of the time you will have to, because they just put OBSEC bikers everywhere. So you're forced to move up into the center, and then Reductus Saboteurs behind terrain features can blow you up. So that's like probably somewhere around 8 mortal wounds from each Saboteur if they space them out correctly. And then the Jackal squads, if we hop down to the mounted section here, all have their drive-by demolitions. So each one of them averages somewhere between 5 and 6 mortal wounds. I don't know why I looked up drive-by demolition. There we go. When they normal move in your movement phase. So the army, like, all together can put out somewhere around 20 mortal wounds. I guess like 18 or so. On average, maybe 16-ish. On average, if everything triggers off correctly, right? You get like 8 or something from a Reductus Saboteur between your opponent's movement phase and their grenade. And then you get these guys doing 5, and then you have 2 more Adelan Jackal units that can each roll. Now, obviously, you'll lose some stuff, but that is a lot of mortal wounds to come out of the gate with. You basically get to pick up one of your opponent's units, if that all happens. The downside is that it's a little bit under your opponent's control, because whether or not they engage with the Reductus Saboteurs is up to them. But you can make it very difficult for them not to. We have a bunch of Hand Flamer Acolyte hybrid squads. It's more OC push, because these are all OC2 with wound rerolls, so they're good at fighting utility stuff. Neophyte hybrids times 3 units of 10. Those are all to go into trucks. So we have 2 Goliath trucks. We have 4 Achilles Ridge Runners, 2 heavy mortars units for... Oh, it's all heavy mortars, actually. That's wild. I would have expected a couple of lasers in there for anti-tank, but I guess we're just hoping to do mortal wounds. And then 3 Goliath Rock Grinders, so we can carry more of those around. So the trucks can carry the Neophyte hybrids. We have 1 for the backline, so that we can obsec the home objective and then run into a vehicle. And then we have 2 units that can get delivered by trucks. These guys can get delivered either just naturally deep striking or by being carried around by the Rock Grinders. So all of your vehicles have high OC. You can stack them with the also high OC mounted units. If you don't kill the mounted stuff, then they obsec. If you kill the vehicle, then you dump between 10 and 20 OC onto the objective. So it's just this huge primary objective race, basically. This army, it does okay damage if it can get all of its abilities active. The Goliaths do a little bit. If we look at the Rock Grinder datasheet, they actually have a pretty okay melee attack. But it's not going to be a crazy amount of damage. And a lot of times what you're looking to do is fight this into stuff that, like, other kind of, like, objective push armies that you can engage with in melee that aren't, like, super heavily armored. Because if you fight, you know, big Votann shardless or something like that, you're not really going to be able to compete with them. However, if you do fight a bunch of infantry units, you are going to be able to kill them eventually. The Goliaths also have, like, okay shooting. It's not amazing, but you do get a heavy mining laser on those guys too. Plus their demolition cache, which comes at strength 9 AP2. It's 5 up to hit though, so it's like really inconsistent. So it's pretty cool. You can find some damage in the army, but most of the time you're just going to be trying to steal objectives from your opponent until they don't have any points. And with the ability to move 12-inch moving transports and deliver 10 to 20 OC onto objectives from that distance, feels pretty sweet. Seems nice. Making use of the -1 damage, yeah, for sure. We got some Tyranids over here as well. Hayden Mansky running Invasion Fleet. This one we do get kind of back to sort of more normal lists, I guess, here. Although it is cool to see Tyranids at the top end of teams. This does, I think, play into armies that can't clear the... Oh, this is a Hormigant unit. I guess in most of the cases it's the same. Hormigants versus Termagants. You can both target them with Endless Swarm to regenerate them back to the unit, so you can steal objectives and stuff. But this is another sort of primary objective control game. We have 2 units of Hormigants, Gargoyles that can advance and then shoot and scoot to hop onto objectives. And then the big 20-man can try to hold down objectives and then reanimate back onto things. Triple Neurolector to force battle shock checks on people, too. And then a Norn Emissary for OC 15. So it's not a ton of damage from this particular build, but it is a ton of OC control. More battle shock stuff from the Death Leaper, too. So trying to push up the points, the point scores, which is cool. Helps the team format. And I think similarly, we have some builds from Militarum and from Orks. Astra Militarum is Grizzled Company. I mean, this is sort of what we were talking about earlier, where it's just the list. This one's running Leontis, which is interesting. Double Torox, Rough Riders, Bulgrin for Abhuman detail to assign orders to. Kazarkin for the Toroxes, Rogodorns for Lord Leontis to order. It's one of the lists of all time. Pretty normal stuff. I don't know. However, Orks are playing Bully Boyz, which is cool. We're just talking about Bully Boyz. We're talking about Bully Boyz, and then we get to actually review a list. Is it off meta? Just playing objective play? Yeah, because it's Tyranids. Tyranids is like very off meta right now. They're not very good. Jacob here is running triple War Boss plus a Mega Armor War Boss. So all those guys will get the second WOG bonus from Bully Boyz. And then they'll apply that to their unit because it checks Knob or War Boss units. Zodgrad Wartsnaga So a lot of times what we can do there is we can use the basic WOG earlier than normal to apply a 5-up invulnerable save to all the boys units that are running at you, and then to supercharge Zodgrad's unit, because Zodgrad gives you the movement buff when you WOG. He doesn't get the benefit of the second WOG, but he gives you the ability, he gives you the enhanced unit on the first WOG. So you get 9-inch scout, and then you could, like, if you go first, for example, turn 1 WOG. So you can push everything forward and get the invulnerable save on everything else. And then this unit gets an additional 6 inches of movement. So they're moving 21 top 1, and then can advance and charge. And then you still have a WOG for all your melee stuff later. So you kind of get the best of both worlds from the stacked WOGs. We have double truck and battle wagon to deliver our melee stuff. Double Gretchen, a bunch of mega knobs to get the feel no pain bonus when you do the second WOG. Or I guess both WOGs, because you can just run them at people. And then double knobs to deliver war bosses and stuff too. Pretty cool. That is, it is, I think, interesting seeing. This is a lot of like jail stuff, right? And most of these lists we're looking at are. It's a lot of like jail energy, right? Especially with the Adelan shackles from the Genestealer build get scouts, so they can scout and then run forward and drive by demolition and then lock you in place and obsec the midboard if you can't clear them. And this is basically the same strategy, very similar to the Tyranids as well. Tyranids will play a little differently, I think, because they only have 1 gargoyle unit, but all of these lists have a very similar bent to them. Definitely a meta game sort of being established. You want to talk about jail as well? Also running Renegade Raiders as Chaos Space Marines. Nathan Bleakley also on the team running Scouting Dark Commune. So we can scout and then advance and charge with our once per game. Plus double Standard Dark Commune, Fabius Bile, and Vashtor. 48 Accursed Cultists, plus a Destructor, a big Chosen Brick, and a Forge Fiend. That's the Forge Fiend's for Vashtor to get Lone Operative from, and then he gives +2 strength. We've chosen that can hop in a Rhino in order to get delivered with Fabius Bile, but then the rest of the list is just Accursed Cultists. Basically, we hit with the Scouting unit first, and then you can stage 1 unit at a time to go into your opponent to get the benefit of the advance and charge. And then you also have advance and charge on the chosen unit naturally as well. This is a blast from the past. It's been a while since we he even calls it out. It's all reliable. It's been a while since we've seen this particular build in play. But that's definitely like a year and a half ago. This would have been 90% of Chaos Space Marine lists that you see. We're very similar like that. So that's a little interesting, I guess. These guys, I think, definitely playing into a much more aggressive sort of game than we typically see. This is a Virulent Victorium with like normal Virulent Victorium stuff is the last list. Double Plague Marine, triple Fetid Blow Drone. With Blight Launchers, 2 Plague Spitter Blow Drones, double Poxwalkers. It's like a normal list. I guess there's no DST, there's no Terminators in it, but we're taking the
at under
space
100
of those with
calories
the
donated
squads.
$5 through Super Chat. Hey Travi, it was a pleasure meeting you at GDG Winter Ruin. I ended up going 3-3 with Emperor's Children.
Oh yeah, man. Congratulations. That's awesome. Yeah, it was nice. It was nice finally putting a face to the under 100 calorie name. But thanks for coming up and saying hi. I appreciate that. Thanks to everybody who said hi at Winter Ruin. A bunch of people came up and said that they appreciated the coverage and stuff, which I liked. Thank you. Thanks for doing that. It was nice to meet all of you. Now I'm curious if we could dive into. I would love to dive into the. Into the meta for this event. Here's what I have. Website expired. Cool. So I actually have no idea how to find a pack for this. Well, It would be cool to see if there was any particular like terrain format. People always ask me like, oh, why don't you put the terrain format in your videos? This is why, chat. I have no fucking idea what it is. I have no way to know in 90% of cases. Sometimes they link their information on the event detail, but that's like 50-50 chance. 90% of the time there's no player pack for these events. At least that's listed publicly. The events will get it separately. The players will get it separately. But it's curious to see that these armies, thank you for the membership, by the way, Prairie Wargaming. It's curious to see that these armies in this particular event played hyper aggressively, which definitely helps when it comes to gaining those 20 O's that you need to get wins. Whereas in most of the other events, we saw much more defensively oriented armies, and I wonder what the difference there is. And I don't know. Is the long and short of it? I have no idea why they would do that. But that's a lot of the team event stuff. I would basically tried as hard as I could to cherry pick out the builds that I think were non-standard. But it is like kind of extra work here in order to do that, because I think more so, as I said before in the video, more so than singles events, teams I think definitely trends towards, unless you have a specific plan, trends towards playing the most generic version of the army possible. And that is the case for like 99% of these lists. Part of that is the restriction on factions. Part of that is also, I think, the fact that a lot of players in team events tend to be less practiced with the particular faction that they are assigned, because a lot of times you'll pull players from a gaming group, but have duplicates of a player who specializes in a particular faction. So a lot of times you see these players who are playing a non-standard faction for themselves and don't necessarily have a lot of like agency over their list composition, because they just don't have a lot of experience with it, which makes sense. But in the vast majority of these cases, these armies are very similar to what would be like sort of standard metagame. So it's tougher to find the unique pieces of technology. I think this event is probably the exception rather than the rule that is built explicitly for team play. Beyond like, interesting constructs like the, Hexwarp Thrallband lists, or like Delve Shift Assault or Delve Assault shits and stuff. So anyway, I don't know. But with that, chance, that's what I have to say about team events in 40K. I think we had a list review to do. I'll check to see if I have that. Not if my Discord dies. Maybe I haven't submitted my face for recording. It is Wyvern Wargaming Teams. So it's Valor Strike Lance with Cerasus Atropos, Knight Castellan. This is the one where all the enhancements buff other things, right? So Evanescent Ion, choose another Imperial Knight model against Stealth. Judiciant's Helm, excuse me. Another unit gains Ignore Cover. The Knight Crusader. Armiger Warglaive, Void's Men at Arms for the backline. So Castellan can give Crusader Ignore Cover, which is big. And then 2 Castellans who can Evanescent Ion, I guess whatever's in front, and the Castellans shoot from the behind. It seems okay. I guess the question that I would have is what else was on the team? And if I can't find the event, then I have no idea. is the answer. I cannot find the event chat. I guess we will look for it on Best Coast, probably. I'm not getting it, chat. No search results available. Is it 3 rounds? Nope. It's just not there. Yeah, I have no idea. Unfortunately, no way to know what else is on the team here. So I guess it's like the big damage guns from the Castellans. I guess he's pretty good right now. It certainly like skews the like Valor Strike fast Castellans because you gain Assault, right? And then you can full tilt to go faster. So the Castellans are much more motile than you would typically play against them as, because they're base move 8, but then they go to move 10 with D6 plus 2 advance, so they can move up to 18. You basically like double their movement characteristic. For 2 CP, if you roll high enough on your advance roll, of course. So if you can assign that more open layouts, or some of the layouts where the deployment zones allow you to like forward deploy and touch midboard terrain more easily, the Castellans can like super duper skew what your opponent's allowed to do. Just because your capacity to just hit them top of 1 is huge, so they have to play so scared. So it does make sense, I think. You just avoid like the armies that can go blow for blow with double Castellan in a shooting fight, or the armies that are like a million models, right? Because this army is, I guess the Crusader's going to do pretty well, but the rest of the army's like kind of pretty mediocre at it. Once you engage the Knight Castellans, that they are like they have a bad time. You can fall back. Can you fall back and shoot in this detachment? I don't think so. I believe that is Questor's Companions. You just have reactive moves in this one, yeah. So once you get engaged, things get awkward. But you can consider like layout 4 if you're playing Chapter Proof 2025. It's like really, really gross for these armies because you can very easily touch like a lot of the midboard from a lot of deployment slots with these. Layout 2, probably very similar as well, where having fast guns is like super crazy on those. Or layout 3 also can have that happen to it as well. So I like it. In the context of a teams event, makes sense to me. But the curious thing is that we don't see more of this kind of stuff, right? And I think that's it's showcased to me like a big shift in the team's metagame, where more often than not, the team that is playing more meta, like more consistent meta stuff, is the one that's doing well. Outside of like First Defenders, which a lot of times is like can do some weird chicanery to play around particular terrain formats. A lot of times it's just the team that plays like more normal lists tends to do very well, is the trend that I've been seeing in the last, I don't know, 3 months or so. Am I a bio major? I am. I have a biomedicine degree. All right, champ. Well, I think that's all I have to talk about. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. I will be live over on the Twitchies. I think what we're going to be doing, we're going to do a little bit more hangout sort of content over there. I think what I'm going to do is start a Dawn of War playthrough. I have never actually played the Dawn of War 1 campaign. And so that's something we're probably going to do on stream over the next couple of days. I'm a little tired because I streamed the last couple of weeks. I streamed like basically between 1 and 2 40K games each day. And then between GTs, I played 2 GT, or I participated in 2 GT plus events back to back. So my average 40K game per day has been like 2.5. over the last 2 weeks. So I am so tired. I think we're gonna hang out. We're gonna have some bevs, and we're gonna chill. That'll probably be in about an hour or so over on Twitch. We'll be back to normally scheduled content later on this week, but I do need a little bit of just hangout time. So if you want to come talk shop with me, we'll talk about 40K. We'll talk about the meta. We'll talk about other stuff. We'll vibe with some Dawn of War, and we'll have a good one. So I think that is what we're gonna do. We take a list of those great and singles and adjust it. We can cherry pick matches and terrain. Should be good theoretically. Yeah. It's interesting because like for a while we saw these teams that were like very clearly designed for the format, where it was like you had like like 2 to 3 teams that were these like very like extremely specifically like organized defenders. You had one team that was oftentimes you would play 1 to 2 skews, and then you would play like 2 just like super killer hammer blow lists. And now it just feels like most teams, and maybe it's the fact that like a lot of the armies at the top of the game right now just seem to fall into those slots. That could be part of it. But it seems like a lot of teams are just like pull the top 8 lists from the game and then play them. And unfortunately, that feels to me like it's I don't know. It's not the sign of a particularly healthy team format. And most of the teams that I've reviewed in the last couple of weeks have been doing that. But I also think it speaks to the fact that the internal balance of most armies in 40K is maybe the worst it's been in a really long time. I'm not going to say that the balance of 40K is in a particularly bad spot. I think that there are a couple glaring, points of contention. I think that Space Marines and Necrons clearly still extremely strong, and then there's a bunch of other lists that are like sort of almost at that tier. Mont Katao, Grizzled Company, Astra Militarum, they're like edging up there. They're trying. But if we see the top dogs, if we see Necrons get a hit, I think the metagame is going to be very interesting in terms of faction representation. However, I'm worried about internal balance because most of these factions have one playable build, and that's it. I'd even be interested to see, because right now there's like a push for Kroot hunting pack in Tau, but I feel like a lot of that is a response to Pantheon of Woe, and if Pantheon of Woe gets hit, so Tau can go back to playing just like big punchy guns that will shoot you, if everyone just plays Makai again. We'll see. I don't know. So it's a whole thing. I'm not the happiest with the how the metagame has shaken out, but it's mostly because most of the list looks the same right now. It's not that they're all belong to one faction, but all the lists from a single faction look the same, if that makes sense. Anyway, chat, I'm gonna hop off. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me. Come hang out with me over on Twitch, probably around 5 p.m. US Eastern, something like that. We'll be on for a couple hours over there, and I'll see you over there. Thanks everyone. Cheers. Keep it classy, folks. Have happy wargaming, and I'll see you in the next one.